If you will, turn to, if we look into the book of Haggai for our introduction to this week. The first 5 verses introduce us and say quite a bit about the book. In the 2nd year of Darius the king, in the 6th month, in the 1st day of the month, came the word of the Lord by Haggai, the prophet, unto Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, This people say, The time is not come, the time that the Lord's house should be built. Then came the word of the Lord by Haggai the prophet, saying, Is it time for you, O ye, to dwell in your sealed houses, and this house lie waste? Now therefore, thus saith the Lord of hosts, Consider your ways. Let us again go to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity you've given us to look into your word, to see and hear your prophet. But understand today, even though talking of times past, that there is great truth and application for us even today. Guide us now in our study. We ask it in your Son's name. Amen. So Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi are besides being the last 3 books, these are all books written after the Jews returned from their captive years. The term Darius actually turns out to be a man by the name Histopus, the king of Medo-Persia, which was the second of the world empires. Remember that great statue? Babylon having been overthrown by the Persian Cyrus. The Jews, having no king of their own, dated by the reign of the world kings to whom they were subject. So Darius is a common name for the Persian kings, as was Pharaoh for the Egyptians and Caesar for those of Rome. So it isn't necessarily a personal name. And the stage is this, that after having been in captivity, and we read this a little bit from Isaiah, from Ezra, and I didn't put on the outline here, but Nehemiah. If you read these books, you can read more about that time period. But having returned, or about to return out of captivity, and in captivity, the time period for reconstruction in Israel, specifically in Jerusalem. And what Cyrus does is, first of all, returns the temple artifacts, then offers to fund the temple restoration, which, as we said, you can read about that in Isaiah, and Ezra and Nehemiah also tell us about that reconstruction period. At this time, 50,000 Jews take him up on his offer, which are mostly priests, Levites, and many of the poor. 2 that we're familiar with, Daniel and Haggai, choose to remain behind. They're older. This journey is not something that they aspired to take. And in Jerusalem, within 2 years, the people eagerly reconstruct the altar, the priests begin temple ministry, and celebrate the temple's foundation, which you can read about in the book of Ezra. Now then, Ezra sends back notice that there's people living around Jerusalem that aren't excited about the revival of the Jewish state. And for 6 years they thwart it. They do all they can to slow down the construction. Then, in 530 BC, Cyrus is killed in battle, and his son Xerxes, or Cambyses II, assumes the throne. Now, a letter sent to Xerxes filled with accusations about Israel and what they're doing to reconstruct lies are told, and he orders the reconstruction to cease. 8 years pass, and during that time, those that have moved back are now building their own homes. They're resettling their homesteads. They're going back to their land and farms and businesses and the basic necessities of life and daily living over this period. Then comes 2 years of royal intrigue, and there's a whole story about this behind all that happens, and just say that it's befitting a Hollywood movie to see the royals fighting among themselves, imposters coming to the throne, and more distant relatives coming to power. So after 2 years of intrigue, murder, imposters, and Xerxes' mysterious death, he dies, and history says questionable conditions. Almost any royal dying at any period of time other than in battle, it's questionable. So his third cousin, whom we know as this Darius, comes to the throne. And this is the moment. So this is the point, and this is where the book takes off for us in our understanding of what's going on. So Haggai, speaking to those that have already been at work, but have had a long period of time to do the work, and have left off the work, and then have not restarted the work. He has 4 portions of Scripture in a short, just few chapter book. They put the temple progress on hold. And so the progress is questioned. And I like how the New King James version of this verse says, "Is it time for you yourselves to dwell in your paneled houses and this temple to lie in ruins?" Houses were made of stone at the time. If you had any wood inside, it was purely for look. It didn't really serve a lot. You had some cross members in some houses that were more than one story, and a lot of houses were that way. In fact, that's what you did. You lived in a portion of it, and then you also lived usually on top of your house. These were cooler inside during the day, but eventually the house heats up, and so in the evening, what would you do? When the cooler air was outside, you went up on top of your house. And there was some wood in the construction of that to bear some of those stones, but for the most part, they were stone houses. So inside, if you paneled your houses, and it's talking about the same thing that we talk about today in paneling. You probably have a house. Our house is unique in that if we remove the paneling, you just about can see the outside, because I'm not sure in our house there's, in fact, just in playing around, I have poked a screwdriver through my paneling and on out through the outside of the house. So we don't have much. There's not a lot in between all of that. So it's an older model, and they didn't, all of our talking this morning about insulation, they didn't concern themselves a whole lot with insulation when my house was constructed. And through the miracle of PEX and that piping, under my house, I don't have to worry too much about freezing, but I still have to be somewhat concerned. But it's the conditions. But paneling, for the most part, has come to mean or signify our customization of our house. Whether it's just drywall, and we have certain standards these days that we must follow. We must admit that a lot of how we finish our houses is to look like how we would like it to look. Is it just functional, or is it also nicer? Well, what would be the sin of that? Well, wood paneling is a luxury, and if they as a people are being gauged, what's the sin of that? It's a little bit like this. We've said this in the past. You know, God doesn't really care a whole lot about what you spend your money on, as long as that hasn't become your new God. You can have nice things. God doesn't want me to have nice things. That's not what he says. But where is the priority? The sin here is too much devotion to their own fortunes and upgrades. They spend all their time on their own, and that project for which they really originally came to the land is sitting over their idol. They got some of it done, but not enough. I used to hand out a little booklet, and I'm reminded of it. I wish I had a few more copies to hand out here. And I'm going to look into getting some more of this, because it's a little pamphlet, but it's very meaningful, and it's really been an encouragement to me through the years. And I forget it, and that's why I say to be reminded of it is a good thing. Think about the situation that they were in. The tyranny of the urgent is the enemy of the important. You know what's that mean? That little booklet goes on to explain that. And it is a Christian book. It's written to help us understand. And this very book that we're talking about, and the prophet is speaking to us about today, has a lot to say about this. So many things in life are important, but they're not urgent. They don't have a deadline, and that's what trips us up. We respond to what we perceive as the urgent, right? Not always to the important. Deadlines, 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 deadlines. And we all talk about how we hate that. And yet most of us structure our lives that way so that we meet those deadlines. Payments are due on a certain day. And if they're not made, there are people that get upset. And they don't take kindly to you describing and saying, I realize that it's important to you, but for me, it just wasn't all that urgent. They require, a payment. They even threaten to do things like cut off your utilities. What's up about that? Don't they understand I need those things? Well, of course. What's important? What's urgent? Sometimes urgent and important can be tied together. But as a lifestyle, I see this all the time. In fact, it happens in the very house that I live in. And so when I wanted to move in that, and many of you remember that time period, we were just new here, and Karen and I were just getting going in our life, and I worked at Home Depot. Almost every afternoon, I came home and worked on that little building. It doesn't look anything at all like it did the day that I was granted a key and they put it in my hand. I was so proud that day because I didn't have any place to live, really. So it was, for Karen and I, our house. We make it a home. The house part of it needed help. And I began construction of different things. But there are a few details that I didn't quite finish here and there that stayed that way once we said, oh, this is great now. And I sat down and really didn't get back up to finish some of those details. It's taken a long time to finish putting flooring on. It's taken a long time to take care of the steps that were threatening to life, going outside. And yet, a well-placed nail held them back together for a little bit, or other things. I think I've told this story before, but years ago I went to Port Orchard and pastored church there, First Landmark in Port Orchard and Washington. And a lot of the building seemed unfinished. There was like trim going down part of a wall, and then it stopped and didn't go any farther. They were in the process of converting kind of similar how we're doing here. They had a nursery area, and they were using it, wanted to use it as a sound room and some other things. And there was drywall still nailed up, but not even taped yet. And so in a business meeting, I casually asked about that. I said, so you guys got some projects going here. Probably need finishing. How long ago is it that that those were started? 10 years and longer. Had some of those projects set because, well, that was Brother Jack, and Brother Jack was a contractor, and he knew how to do all that. And then they left, and they're now members somewhere else, and we don't know how to do that. We don't know how to put trim up. We don't know how to, So one of my first things as pastor was to say, come on, let's finish what we started. And they were all excited about it, and were so proud when we got it all done and finished the rooms off and did everything. But I realized, and have been reminded of this at several places in my life, you did the same thing. You took on projects. Jared's mom, when I bought a Willys truck, for those that know what that is, that's the forerunners of Jeeps. And I bought one, and it needed parts. So I bought another one for parts. And I found another one that was even a better deal. And so pretty soon I had 4 Willys trucks sitting in front of my house. And you know the rest of the story, how this goes. And that was not conducive to good marital harmony. So something had to go. And most of it had to deal with those trucks. Farmers, I won't even go there. I grew up on a farm. My mom and dad moved from the farm to the city, and it took a truck for mom and the household and another truck for dad and what he brought in from the farm. Things that you need. A 30-gallon barrel of nails. Which, when I was young, he often had me at straightening out the nails. For hours, I'd straighten nails. I say all of that to probably overemphasize how we all tend to be in life. Some things are urgent, and they deal with food and care, and maybe those bills and some other things. And some things are important, but not as urgent, and so I don't necessarily take care of them. The dentist asked me, when's the last time you had your teeth cleaned? That for me is every morning, and I brush my teeth every day. No, I'm talking about, and you know what I mean. There are forms of torture we go under, and most forms of dentistry are just modern day torture, I think. But what does he point out? You floss, you do all these things? Yeah, I do. I'm lying. No. You didn't do what was important. You waited until it became urgent. I go and see a dentist when the tooth hurts, and the dentist says, why didn't you take care of that? Yeah. And other things. It's a common problem. It's what we do even physically. It's not urgent. I'm not dying today, but I'm reminded that, it's not urgent. I'm not on my way to the hospital because I've had a heart attack. But guaranteed if I was, the doctor would probably be telling me what? He should have been, ought to have been, doing the important things ahead of that. I have to tell you that this whole week I have been under conviction. The Lord is working on me. I don't know about you, but for me and Haggai and the Lord have had to talk this out several times this week about the spiritual implications, the physical implications, the things that, just seem important, but they're not. And the things that seem urgent, but they're not important. And where's my time? How am I using my time? And all of those things that go around that. I encourage you to get a copy of that little booklet and just finish reading through Haggai and be ready for God to just get under your skin and change some things that you're doing probably. Here's a good application. Chapter 1, verses 6 through 8. It says, "Ye have sown much and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put it into a bag with holes. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. Go up to the mountain, bring wood, build the house, and I will take pleasure in it, and I will be glorified, saith the Lord." The modern application, the current one at the time when this was written was, you guys are doing everything to take care of yourselves. And it's not enough, is it? Your priority says, I have to do this. You're urgently looking after your family. But what's important, I told you what to do. I sent you back to a land to do it, and you started it, but things got a little tough, and you stopped doing it. I'm sorry, it got a little uncomfortable for you. Get back to work. Go get the wood. Get back to work. And that's how I'll be glorified. But as I say here, if you are self-absorbed and neglecting God, you'll never be satisfied. You'll never earn enough money. You'll never panel the house well enough. There'll always be something more. Oh, Lord, I do this for you, but. What is the but? What is it that keeps you from doing the next thing? And anything that is a hindrance, and it's self-absorption. Even if it is our most important focuses in our life. The very first thing, you have sown much and bring in little. You plant, but the field doesn't grow anything. That's really about the money, right? You earn wages and put them in a bag with holes. Anybody ever felt that was happening? The more I make, the more goes out the bottom. Why is that? This isn't just a problem in our society, which it is, but God's people are squarely in the crosshairs of what Haggai is saying here. Then and now. You think to take care of yourself, and you do all that, and you find out that what it takes to have a life is never in itself satisfying. I was listening to someone talk about some actress on TV here, and she's one of the highest paid on TV. She gets $20 million a year. I could get by in one, just fine. What do you do with that? I don't wish any less for anybody in the whole world. I wish more for some. I hope and pray for those that need a step up and some help. But you know, the problem at either end of that spectrum is that what are we expecting and looking for? What is the priority? Well, I need a career that I can embrace. Really? My dad just said, you need a job. Now go to work. Well, I need a so-and-so, I need this house, I need to go from this to this and this. Because why? Well, because I've earned it. Have you? Well, great. And what gets set aside because of that? Again, the Lord, you can live in the Taj Mahal and serve God, and it's just fine. I'm just saying that the priority of 50,000 or more people in Israel at the time that this is written was not to take a little time out of the day and go down to the temple and do a little work. Just a little work. They had become fixated with what it takes to do life. I don't know about you. I'm humored sometimes. I open the cabinet, look in there, and I go, nothing to eat. It is full of food. And I say, there's nothing to eat. How silly is that? In our house, of course, that means, how do you want your beans? My wife loves beans. She loves to serve them in a variety of ways. We eat a lot of beans in our house, and a lot of different things. That's great. But some days I'm just not a bean guy. Or whatever it is. Isn't it silly? I've looked in a cabinet, and there's flour, there's sugar, there's everything that somebody needs to bake something, and we just go, nope, nothing. We got to go get some food. Well, why do you even have flour in your cabinet? What, right? We're just so weak because we have become so accustomed to what is provided for us that it's very hard for us to do something, to take some time to build something, to put it together, to construct it. I face this a lot of times. I love an instrument called the guitar. I'm fascinated with it. I love it. I can play like 4 chords, and I find myself content until someday I want to do it. And had I applied, what I really needed to know was a little understanding of music and practice and application, I could be playing today. I see people, Eric Clapton's and other people, and go, wow, phenomenal. Yeah, well, they could have been listening to my album had I applied myself. That is not going to happen anytime soon. It's not important to me, nor is it even urgent. And so I don't apply myself to it. I don't want to take on the extra work that it takes. It's just too easy to know a few chords and strum along, and then I can set it back and I'm content for a while. Whatever in life you want to apply that to. Music, mechanics, cooking, whatever. How about the spiritual implications? How are we affected and how are we affecting the work of God? By being complacent. By being able to say, I love the Lord. I'm just not going to do that today. Whatever that little extra is today. Well, why is even the temple a big deal? Maybe some ask that. Well, we came here, we went to build a temple, and you guys are all happy about it. That's great. But, man, that is I didn't realize it until I got here, and then I saw that. That's a big job. Do we really need one of those? The priests, they rebuilt an altar, and we got a foundation. Isn't that good? We're doing the rituals again. Isn't that enough? It's because they didn't understand what God's priority was. They were reassigning priorities according to their view of it. I know what God said about the temple, but I think, isn't that always the problem? I feel, those are all great psychological terms, but in the terms of God and God's will and His decisions for the church, we think we can reinterpret them. Exodus 25 says, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them, according to all that I showed thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle, and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall ye make it. Very concretely, build the temple with the blueprint that I gave you from the tabernacle and everything I've given you. You build it the way and to the dimensions I tell you. Why? It's a dwelling. It dwelt in the nation and was a conscious, a visible reminder of God. The altar signified the rites or rituals, and the sanctuary signified relationship. The things to do for God and the things to feel for God. The temple represented those things. The temple took no one to heaven. It just simply pointed you to the one that could. What it's teaching is that God desires a relationship. I don't know if you remember this, but a couple of things that are interesting about the temple. One of them, is the temple faced east. The direction that Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden. They're told that direction. Adam and Eve, to the east. The door of the temple, to the east. Why? Because it symbolizes where you would stand at your front door for the return. What is it that God wanted? He wanted Adam and Eve to come back. Come back into relationship. Mark chapter 15 helps us understand this a little bit. In 15 verses 37, 38, and Jesus cried with a loud voice and gave up the ghost, and the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom. It tells us that today we're good even though a physical temple doesn't exist, because something happened that day. The access no longer was symbolized by a veiled holy place, but was now open, and man could freely access. He no longer needed an actor, someone in his place. The rites and rituals of religion had already taught all that they needed to teach because Messiah was here. And that's what they were pointing to. The man, and through the church, now ministers in place of the brick and mortar. This building is not the new temple. I know a lot of churches, and I guess it's kind of a thing among Baptists, because I know a ton of Temple Baptist Church. They've named it. It's a holy name. It's okay. But really, that's the wrong application. The house of God today, this building, is not representing the temple. You know who represents the temple today? We do. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, 15 through 17 says, if any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved. Yet so as by fire. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy, for the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are. The Corinthians are reminded that their works and actions should represent the invisible dwelling God in his home in us, in believers. My actions say something about what's in me. That's what the temple did. The temple talked, and by metaphor and example and colors and all the things that were in part of it, particularly the old tabernacle and all the layers of skins and all the things taught about the redemption that Messiah would bring, and taught people about that. The blood sacrifices, not the first one saved anybody. It pointed to a point of faith for them to have faith in the God that they were sacrificing to, that he would provide the Passover. All of these things taught us what we know today. The church is the visible representation of the house or the kingdom. The sanctuary, as we call it, is where the relationship is observed. Internally, God lives in us. Externally, we live it out here in this visible assembly. And we go out into the world. That's temple for us today. Is it important? Of course. What happened when Haggai told everyone what he said? Verse 12 and 15 says, then Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest, with all the remnant of the people, obeyed the voice of the Lord their God and the words of Haggai the prophet, as the Lord their God had sent them. And the people did fear before the Lord. Then spake Haggai, the Lord's messenger, and the Lord's message unto the people, saying, I am with you, says the Lord. Verse 14, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and the spirit of Joshua, and all the families, the high priest, the spirit of the remnant of the people. They came and did work in the house of the Lord of hosts their God, in the 24th day of the 6th month, in the 2nd year of Darius the king. And as I note there, Haggai has something that few other prophets had. Success. They listened. Don't you feel sorry for these other prophets that even overlapping, several prophets are talking about the same period of time? Turn, come back to God. It's going to be bad. Come. And they just went, Huh? These people said, oh, that's what God said? And they responded with enthusiasm. But in chapter 2, verse 2 through 4, particularly notice verse 3 here. It says, who is left among you that saw this house in their first glory? And how do you see it now? Is it not in your eyes in comparison of it as nothing? That verse says, they're working on it, and they were looking at it, and they said, by our current construction methods and everything we're doing, it doesn't look anything like the good one, the best one, the one I remembered before. But verse 4 says, yet now be strong, O Zerubbabel, saith the Lord, and be strong, O Joshua. The high priest, be strong, all ye people of the land, saith the Lord, and work, for I am with you, saith the Lord of hosts. It's not going to look like the other one. And some people, many of us, me included, I am not a perfectionist. I am not. There are times that my wife accuses me of that because I want the best sometimes and I can't get my mind around not having or doing the best in some situation. But I'm not compulsive about it. That's the difference. People that have obsessive compulsive disease, OCD, are so dedicated to the perfection of one element that they don't see the rest. My mom had a little problem with this as the dementia was taking her over, and she started being obsessed with some things and yet would leave off other things. She had an obsession with washing. She would take a washcloth and wash all the time and say, Mom, you're clean. Oh, you can see. No, I can't see anything. But she seemingly could. But she didn't care to eat right. And usually people that have that disorder find that out. Something is so perfect, and yet something is left undone. The Lord simply is telling them, what I'm mostly interested in is you doing the work. I'm with you. I'm with you. Don't you think I can see it? I can see it. I think for us and for me, particularly this week, I needed to be reminded that He says to them, and He says to you and me, I'm with you. When we get discouraged with slow progress or a poor outcome, we need to keep in mind that God is working among us. I confess to you that I thought there would be more people in our pews by this time. And that there are days that when I look at that, I wonder, what am I doing wrong? And what is it that I need to do? And there's plenty of guilt to be shared with that. As I jokingly say, guilt's the gift that keeps on giving. And it does. And we're guilted a little bit every Sunday, aren't we? I can't deny it, that every Sunday I speak here, and there's a little guilt that comes out of here. It can be a lot of guilt that you hear coming out of what is being said. Are you guilting us into doing these things? Well, we feel that, and that is an honest feeling. It's a real emotion that we have, and God can use that to benefit His causes. It can be used to benefit us at home. It can also be misused, and often is. We can be so legalistic in our day-to-day business as a church that we forget why we do it. You do it for the ritual, not for the relationship. Relationship always goes before ritual. I don't do anything to get saved, but once I get saved, then I can start doing some things, right? That's Ephesians. As I do that, I must be careful to not think about it in terms that it can't be. 1 Chronicles chapter 28, verse 20 reminds us this. David said to Solomon his son, "Be strong and of a good courage, and do it. Fear not, nor be dismayed, for the Lord God, even my God, will be with thee. He will not fail thee nor forsake thee until thou hast finished all the work for the service of the house of the Lord." This is essentially saying that if God's in it, He'll provide what you need to have in order to get it done. This doesn't mean that missionaries can just say, "I'm going to go to Afghanistan." And when you get there, if you can get there, that waiting there will be all that you need, and that all the funds that you have will just flow in and all be great. I learned a long time ago that the Lord's people need to understand the need of some of the Lord's workers in order for those needs to be met. And so missionaries do what's called deputation. They go out and tell churches about what they're going to do, and the Lord partners with those churches and the sending church, and the needs of a missionary can be taken care of. I worried when I was on the field in Colorado that I would build, I didn't know how we would ever build a building. We needed to raise about $100,000. You do understand today, $100,000, that's not even a down payment on modern housing. So, how would He provide that? Same way that He would provide. Missionaries are going to cities. Imagine going into New York City and say, "We want to build a church in New York City." You do realize that a block of land there could be $1 billion. How could that ever be raised? God? If He calls you to the work, He'll provide what you need to do the work. And so they were there. But they could get easily sidetracked by saying, "We'll never ever be like we used to be." Older churches have to work on this. And I have to say that my history, I don't have a long history in this, right? We're a few people, and Bob and Regina, you guys are the ones that can remind us, perhaps, of the glory days of this church, their best days, the days when these pews were fuller, when there were kids filling the sounds of the sides, and activities were happening. Oh, it'll never be, and I'm not taking on the house here. I am saying, though, that I can't promise that it'll ever be like that. I can't promise what a church will be. We have a lot of churches that have become senior because they've aged and they haven't filled. I'm not attacking any means or methods or whatever that allows our churches to come into that situation. They ought not to come into that position, but they do. Churches are closing doors. They're condensing 2 or 3 churches going together where at one time several thrived. spurious beliefs and thoughts. People, rather than supporting a good and solid New Testament scriptural church, many think that they aren't quite doing exactly what they would do, and so they go out and start another one and start another one and start another one. And pretty soon there's 10 churches with 3 people in them. And why? It's all like Haggai is encouraging them. You want it to be like the glory days? It ought to be like just like you think it ought to be. You have an altar. You have the foundation. Let's build on it. Let's go build the temple. Just go build the temple. And that's the lesson for us today. They could have been content forever, even to this day. They could be observing those rites and rituals of the temple because there's no temple building there. Well, that didn't stop them before. But that's not what's desired. Not the Orthodox Jew wants his temple restored, and he knows why. And for their thinking, it fits. They need to get the New Testament in there, right? and come to some understanding. But nevertheless, we're told that they're going to rebuild one of these days. There will be a temple building in Jerusalem. And it'll be magnificent, but it probably won't look like Solomon's. We have great capability. The Lord seems to delight in taking the imperfect, impoverished temples and filling them with His glory. What's He done for you? What's He done for me? Is this not me? Is that not you? Look outside the brick and mortar, and what is it that God's trying to do? Are we not trying to build something more? Build the temple. Make time and capacity do the work. The temple was finished in 4.5 years. At a time when that should have been just decades. Total time, amazing, yes. Well, had a mind to work. So what should we do? The same thing that God was through Haggai was telling them. The Lord says, I'm with you. Get to work. Well, it's not going to be as good. I don't care. You think I'm not with you? I'm with you. Go build the temple. But go build the temple. But go build the temple. Go build the temple. Apply that all across our lives today. How about this temple? God is saying for me, build the temple. But build the temple. Well, you know our church, but build the temple. What are you doing to build the temple? Well, but build the temple. Take an inventory of the important and the urgent and see what you and I can do to build the temple. It could get hard. It is hard. It could be uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable. There are aspects about me that evangelism attacks. You know it. You already know me well enough. I'm not the most social guy that's ever come into the world. I'm not exactly the Unabomber, but A cabin in Montana would be okay. There are times that would be okay with me. I like me and mine. I like sitting on my couch. I like sitting with my wife. I enjoy evenings with her. I enjoy being married. I enjoy my family life. I enjoy my kids. We enjoy our kids, our grandkids, all those things, and those are all important. But so is building the temple. I can't so put it on the side burner that I forget to do it. Just because I don't have a date and an urgency to work for, I should not set it aside. That happened in Jerusalem. You think 50,000 people, there's like 2 or 3 that showed up to do something? I tried to investigate that a little bit, and I haven't found anything that says even one person showed up. They were afraid. There were people says, you go over there and start, we're going to kill you. And God's people said, oh, look at the time. Netflix is on pretty soon. I'll be home. Or I'll be whatever. Whatever it is. You know, it's time to plant the garden. It's time to plant the crops. It's time to do whatever. I got to earn a living. I can't just do this forever. God sent me here, but we got to eat. Got to have a place to live. And over a period of 8, 9, 10 years, don't you think that they still wondered why they weren't doing better than they were doing? And God says, you thought you had it all done. You paneled your house. You got it all finished. You finished the floor and the back deck. And then the water heater goes out. Right? You're never finished with a house. There's a day you say, we're finished. That's like a woman saying her hair is done. I have seen that. And my wife's hair has never been done. Finished. Odysseys of our language, I know, are lost on some, but I hate that they call it the doctor's practice. I don't want him to practice on me. I want him to know what he's doing. But in knowing all that, in setting this aside, is to say that it's never really done. The building of this temple, all of us in this place, is never done. It just can be let be. And we already know this. There's a core group of us. I see you every week. When the doors are open, you're here. And that's a joyful thing to a pastor's heart. I just think that we can get past this. And somehow we have to find a way past all this. I feel Haggai spoke to me this week. And those words might as well be to me. Build the temple. And anything that I say other than okay would not be proper. I just need to say okay. And do what I can for that cause to go forward.